Reading through the Bible in 1 year, June 21st, Deuteronomy 26, Psalms 117 through 118, Isaiah 53, and Matthew chapter 1. Then it will be, when you enter the land which Yahweh your God gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and live in it, that you shall take some of the first of all the fruit of the ground which you bring in from your land that Yahweh your God gives you. And you shall put it in a basket, and go to the place where Yahweh your God chooses for his name to dwell. And you shall go to the priest who is in office in those days, and say to him, I declare this day to Yahweh my God, that I have entered the land which Yahweh swore to our fathers to give us. Then the priest shall take the basket from your hand, and set it down before the altar of Yahweh your God. And you shall answer, and say before Yahweh your God, My father was a wandering Aramaean, and he went down to Egypt and sojourned there, few in number. But there he became a great and mighty and populous nation. And the Egyptians treated us harshly, and afflicted us, and imposed hard slave labor upon us. Then we cried out to Yahweh, the God of our fathers, and Yahweh heard our voice, and saw our affliction, and our toil, and our oppression. And Yahweh brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, with great terror, and with signs and wonders. And he has brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So now, behold, I have brought the first fruit of the ground which you, O Yahweh, have given me. And you shall set it down before Yahweh your God, and worship before Yahweh your God. And you, and the Levite, and the sojourner who is among you, shall be glad in all the good which Yahweh your God has given you and your household. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the 3rd year, the year of tithing, then you shall give it to the Levite, to the sojourner, to the orphan, and to the widow, that they may eat within your gates and be satisfied. Then you shall say before Yahweh your God, I have purged the sacred portion from my house. I also have given it to the Levite and the sojourner, the orphan and the widow, according to all your commandments which you have commanded me. I have not trespassed against or forgotten any of your commandments. I have not eaten of it while mourning, nor have I purged any of it while I was unclean, nor have I given any of it to the dead. I have listened to the voice of Yahweh my God, and have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look down from your holy habitation, from heaven, and bless your people Israel, and the ground which you have given to us, a land flowing with milk and honey, as you swore to our fathers. This day, Yahweh, your God, commands you to do these statutes and judgments. You shall therefore be careful to do them with all your heart and with all your soul. You have today declared Yahweh to be your God, that you would walk in his ways and keep his statutes, his commandments, and his judgments, and listen to his voice. And Yahweh has declared you to be his people, a treasured possession, as he promised you, that you should keep all his commandments, and that he will set you high above all nations which he has made, for praise, a name, and beauty, and that you shall be a holy people to Yahweh your God, as he has spoken. Now Psalms 117 through 118. Praise Yahweh, all nations. Laud him, all peoples. For his loving kindness prevails over us, and the truth of Yahweh is everlasting. Praise Yah. Now Psalm 118. Give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. O let Israel say, his loving kindness endures forever. O let the house of Aaron say, his loving kindness endures forever. O let those who fear Yahweh say, his loving kindness endures forever. From my distress I called upon Yah. Yah answered me and set me in a large place. Yahweh is for me. I will not fear. What can man do to me? Yahweh is for me among those who help me. Therefore I will look in triumph on those who hate me. It is better to take refuge in Yahweh than to trust in man. It is better to take refuge in Yahweh than to trust in nobles. All nations surrounded me. In the name of Yahweh, I will surely cut them off. They surrounded me. Indeed, they surrounded me. In the name of Yahweh, I will surely cut them off. They surrounded me like bees. They were extinguished as a fire of thorns. In the name of Yahweh, I will surely cut them off. You pushed me down violently to make me fall, but Yahweh helped me. Yah is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. The sound of joyful shouting and salvation is in the tents of the righteous. The right hand of Yahweh does valiantly. The right hand of Yahweh is exalted. The right hand of Yahweh does valiantly. I will not die. Indeed, I will live and recount the works of Yah. Yah has disciplined me severely, but he has not given me over to death. Open to me the gates of righteousness. I shall enter through them. I shall give thanks to Yah. This is the gate of Yahweh. The righteous will enter through it. I shall give thanks to you, for you have answered me, and you have become my salvation. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This is from Yahweh. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day which Yahweh has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. O Yahweh, save. O Yahweh, succeed. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of Yahweh. We have blessed you from the house of Yahweh. Yahweh is my God, and he has given us light. Bind the festal sacrifice with cords to the horns of the altar. You are my God, and I give thanks to you. You are my God, I exalt you. Give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. Now, Isaiah 53. As I said yesterday, this is the section known as the suffering servant. Many Jews refer to this as the forbidden chapter, one that they're not allowed to read because it so clearly defines Jesus as the suffering servant, the Messiah, the Mashiach, as the one who must suffer in the place of the Lord's anointed, of his elect. And so this is a hard thing for them to go through. Like an Arminian reading through Romans 9, there's a lot of discussions that happen every word and sentence to knock it down a little bit or to change the meaning of the words. Instead, we're just going to read them as they are. As I said also yesterday, this starts not here at verse 1, but it really begins at chapter 52, verse 13. We're going to start there. Behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted. Just as many were appalled at you, my people, so his appearance was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told them, they will see, and what they had not heard, they will understand. Who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground. He had no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, like one from whom men hide their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening for our peace fell upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned aside to his own way, but Yahweh has caused the iniquity of us all to fall upon him. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, and a sheep that is silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, that for the transgression of my people striking was due to him, so his grave was assigned with wicked men, and he was with a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. But Yahweh was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If you would place his soul as a guilt offering, where we see his seed, rather, he will see his seed, he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of Yahweh will succeed in his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will judge many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will divide for him a portion among the many, and he will divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many, and interceded for the transgressors. Let's move on to Matthew chapter 1 now. An excellent place to begin. Since we're in a new book, let's go ahead and read the introduction. This is a good place to begin because we just finished reading about the Mashiach, Messiah, and what he suffered for us. And now we begin the Gospels anew. The Gospel of Matthew presents Jesus as Israel's Messiah. The account alternates between Jesus' activities of healing and casting out demons and major blocks of his teaching, including the Sermon on the Mount, banger, love it, in chapters 5 through 7. Those are gonna be long days, but it's good stuff. The parables of the kingdom in chapter 13, the Olivet Discourse in chapters 24 through 25. The Sermon on the Mount includes the Beatitudes in chapter 5, verses 3 through 12, and the Lord's Prayer in chapter 6, verses 5 through 15. This book closes with the Great Commission in chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. A recurring theme is the conflict between Jesus and the capital J Jews, the religious leaders in Jerusalem, culminating in his pronouncement of 7 woes upon them in chapter 23. As do all 4 gospel accounts, Matthew focuses on Christ's 3-year ministry and his death and resurrection. Matthew probably wrote his gospel in the late 50s or 60s AD. Let's begin. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was the father of Jacob, and Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. And Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. That's a whole story there, if you remember. And Perez was the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Ram. And Ram was the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab was the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon was the father of Salmon. And Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth, another story we're going to get there shortly. And Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David the king. And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah, another whole story. And Solomon was the father of Rehoboam, bad King Rehoboam. And Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asa. And Asa was the father of Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat was the father of Joram, and Joram was the father of Uzziah. And Uzziah was the father of Jotham, and Jotham was the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz, wicked King Ahaz, and Ahaz was the father of Hezekiah, good King Hezekiah. And Hezekiah was the father of probably one of the worst kings that you can have within Judah, Manasseh, who burned his children alive in worship of demons. Manasseh was the father of Amon, and Amon the father of Josiah. Josiah the father of Jeconiah and his brothers at the time of the deportation to Babylon, because they had so desperately abandoned their God. And after the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel, and Shealtiel the father of Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel the father of Abihud, and Abihud the father of Eliakim, and Eliakim the father of Azor. And Azor was the father of Zadok, and Zadok the father of Achim, and Achim the father of Eliud, and Eliud the father of Eleazar, and Eleazar the father of Matan, and Matan the father of Jacob. Now Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, by whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. Therefore, all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the Christ, 14 generations. Not entirely, but that's okay. I'm going to read the note on that because it's important. So, bringing up the note here. I'll read it from the ESV Study Bible. So, 14 generations. Matthew does not mean all the generations that had lived during those times, but all that he included in his list, where he evidently skipped some, which we'll get to those later, such as the 3 generations between Joram and Uzziah, or who was also known as Azariah. This is in 1 Chronicles 3, 10 through 12. For ease of memorization, or perhaps for literary or symbolic symmetry, that's why he's done this, Matthew structures the genealogy to count 14 generations from each major section. These are major sections that we have through what happens and how the history of Judaism, or really of Israel, has developed. According to the Jewish practice of gematria, the giving of a numeric value to the consonants in a word, David's name would add to DVD, or 464, 14. And David is the 14th name on the list. Again, this isn't saying that there's something about, the Bible codes and all that stuff. That stuff is basically garbage. But it's just something interesting that we have that was developed from the text. We're coming up with ideas for why things were done in a certain way. Again, tons of notes. Let's move on. Verse 18. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child by the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, her husband, being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her, planned to send her away secretly. Why? We read about that. If a man is betrothed to a woman, he's engaged to her, but they haven't yet come together in that way, and she was found to be pregnant. Well, he was going, the law declares that she must be stoned to death at her father's house. But that's not the case. He loved her deeply, and instead of doing what the law demanded, he was going to quietly send her away. But when he had considered this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the one who has been conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit, and she will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Now, all this took place in order that what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet would be fulfilled, saying, Behold, the virgin shall be with child and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. And Joseph got up from his sleep and did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took Mary as his wife, but kept her a virgin until she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. Bringing up the rest of the notes here for you, and there we go. That is all for today. So that's all the text and all the notes. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.